Oh, she was awesome. Hello, and everybody, welcome to the January 17th regular legislative committee meeting of the town of Vegreville. I call this meeting to order at 3:03. First up, we will take a motion for the passing of the agenda. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Is there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next, the adoption of the minutes of our last regular legislative meeting. For a motion, Councillor Bullock makes the motion. Any errors or omissions within the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. First up is going to be Director Saski.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what I have here is period 8, so November 30th, 2022, Municipal Policing Financial Statement. In the memo attached, I have a summary of the most current RCMP Municipal Policing Financial Statement and the final and financial plans that we have in summary. So the financial plan that I last presented to you in July had a per capita member rate of $140,647. This is up from the prior year of $136,892. And this updated forecast that they have as per the letter attached is now going to be $144,687 per capita rate. So it has increased $7,795 since I last presented that to you for the same 2022 to 2023 financial plan. As a reminder, our policing is from March until March. Like it's off kilter. So this is the quarter 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 are in the next period. One thing to note that the RCMP have said that their most recent correspondence, their forecasted policing costs have increased significantly for all communities. Some key drivers in these projections include pay raise, training, equipment, and unit operating and maintenance costs. So that's what they're saying is what has increased. One other thing to note is that in addition to the increase for the in-year pay raise from 2021-2022, we still have accrued $194,057, and this was the retro pay. So that is booked into 2021 financial year, and it's still sitting. We pulled it out of reserves, so right now we have it booked, and the only thing, if they do make us pay that retro pay at any point in time, the only part of the transaction that hasn't occurred is actually the cash going out. So it's sitting in payables. If they make us pay it as of, let's say, tomorrow, it won't hit our financial books because we already have it accrued and taken out of reserves. It'll just impact our cash balance. So just to let everyone know where that sits. Are there any other questions?
Go ahead, Councillor Riddick.
I just have a comment and a question. I've got both. So on my time on council, I have never seen this type of municipal policing financial statement. I've never seen where they've delineated the expectation of service, the type of training, the costing. I've never seen that ever, which is interesting. The other part that is interesting to me, not just the cost overruns from what they had projected, but the expectation or the cost sharing across the municipalities with under 15,000 population, which would include Vegreville, but it also gives maybe a false presumption that there are more communities like us, and actually we're an anomaly. So there's only 32 municipalities of, I forget how many there are in Alberta, 300? 320? Yeah, so realistically, this is a very small group of municipalities with a concern like ours. So for that reason, too, my question is, originally, a long time ago, I had been using data that Paul had provided to me to be able to talk about the retroactive pay and what that increase represented in terms of a tax increase or a percentage of our budget or what kind of incremental growth there is. So I wonder if there's a way to be able to, again, just relate our policing costs to our overall budget and what this updated forecast for 22-23 that they provided to us actually represents in change in terms of what we expected and what we're expected what we anticipated and what we're expected to pay. Is that easy for you to?
Well, even like, for example, this is $8,000 for, let's say, 2 quarters that it's gonna actually impact in our 2023 budget. So $16,000 out of our total budget is not less than 1% in tax basis
Right.
right now. It's quite, like, it is a big overrun, but it's quite small in the grand scheme of things for us right now. Like the $8,000, we'll have to probably bring it to council if that actually does come to fruition, because that'll be, honestly, it might not even be 10% of the budget, because we have for 2023, we have, just a moment, 1.328 million budgeted for the RCMP contract. So 1.3 million, an extra $16,000 isn't even 1%.
But if you take a look at where we were before the raises were giving out alone, so we can probably say it was closer to $96,000 in 1 year, the increase.
Well, for example, our 2022 budget was 1.1 million, and our 2023 budget is now 1.328. So there's a $200,000 plus increase, which is 2% tax increase.
And if we were, and I guess when I've been talking about this, what I try to do, because it makes a 2% increase for Vegreville is different than what Red Deer would be doing, although this impact for them is millions of dollars.
Yes.
What it represents to every taxpayer is an increase in cost without an increase in service availability. We've currently got some vacancies, so there's not, we're not getting any amplification or better access to policing.
Correct.
Except we are paying, as you've just pointed out, another $200,000 over the year previous.
And we just signed a 5-year plan with the RCMP, and what we've seen in there, it's anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000 more in each year in the 5-year plan to cover cameras, body cameras, new armor, new weapons, new cell phones. So every year, we're going to see close to a $90,000 raise on top of this. And with no higher expectations or any better service delivered, as a matter of fact, having 2 out of the staff right now that we're paying for, again, less coverage. So all we keep doing is paying more and more for less service. And it's a fact. And I know the new Staff Sergeant Colin told me right up front that he was going to try to fix the problem with not having a full complement here, even though we are still paying for a full complement. So, again, the taxpayers of Vegreville are in the next, well, let's say the 7-year plan, are looking at probably a 5% increase in their taxes just to cover the policing costs that we have, so.
Yeah. It's a quandary, and it is curious to me that they've shared this data, because previously we've asked for this, actually. We've asked quite specifically to be able to have this data from previous staff sergeants, and they weren't able to provide this, understandably. I mean, being able to break down this financial picture that they provided would be very difficult, but it is interesting and curious that they would provide it now.
Go ahead.
Well, and one other thing about it, I understand that there's a total cost, a number of things factor up to what they're saying is a cost per member. But I do think it kind of proves that there is something very convoluted in their entire setup and the way we have it. If you are looking at some of what they break down, they are basically adding to the member costs the pricing of recruiting them, of training them. In most other scenarios for other things, when you would contract a service, it is that provider's problem to prepare them for anything they need, including prepare them with the equipment. But we are basically paying this contracted service, and part of what they're building in is all the additional costs to get them there, which I understand, but I'm happy to kind of see this because I've never seen this breakdown before. But it sort of reinforces that we're dealing with somewhat of a broken system, which isn't the actual RCMP officer's issue. It has nothing to do with what they're providing us, but the actual setup is somewhat convoluted.
Well, what we've seen in the past year too is over the last 4 years where we're getting a lot of new officers right at a depot and not experienced officers that are being brought here. And I'm not saying they're not doing a good job. We've seen in the past where they've tried to bill us for 9 or they try to slide another 0.5 of an officer onto our side. And if we do not constantly stay on top and let the organization, the RCMP, and I'm not talking the individuals that run this office, but the head office of RCMP, they will try everything they can to download cost onto municipalities for less service. So I would like to have our manager of emergency services have a conversation with the new staff sergeant and see where they're at with these positions that are filled, but there's nobody actually there. And we'd like to move on that. If it's going to be a long-term situation, we'd like to see some officers in their place instead of just empty desk. Okay, is there any other questions regarding this this statement, the financial statement of the RCMP? And like Councillor Rudick said, that we've never seen it broke down like this before. And again, it is what it is, but it is a significant add to our overall costs of running this municipality, and that, like I said, is going to represent at least in the next few years a 5% increase in taxes that we have no say in. And I understand that they need new armor, they need new cameras, and I get that. And the raises, maybe that Alberta Police Force is not looking that bad after all.
It will cost significantly more, Your
We
Worship.
don't know that. We don't have one yet.
Well, I will just say from speaking with the Surrey mayor, who is taking an about-face, and some of the confidential documents that they have surfaced now, that some of the deals that they made were highly problematic, and they're walking it all back.
I certainly am excited in what BC has to tell us about Alberta.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Anyway, that being said, so thank you very much for the information on that report, and we need to always be staying on top of what our costs are there with the policing. And like Councillor Riddick did say, there's 32 municipalities out of 320 in the province that are in the same situation that we are, that have to pay. And we don't have any allies out there trying to help us make it more like healthcare. We all, as Albertans, all throw in together for policing. But okay, there is no other questions for. Okay, next up, CAO Leggett.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in front of you here, we've got a letter from the Vegreville Minor Hockey Association. Came in just under the wire for the agenda here. I won't read the entire letter, but I'll just bring out a couple of the asks and the points they make. So third paragraph on the cover page there, they do mention that they're expanding the program to include young girls teams and many of the youth girls and ladies traveling from other communities are coming here, so that's a good thing for sure. The gist of the letter here is they're looking for the town to expand the ice time into April by approximately 2 to 3 weeks, and that's contained in the fourth paragraph. Yeah, and that's about it. So basically just a consideration there for that going forward. So they're asking with plenty of due course. I know some of those conversations have come up just in my time here. I believe Councillor Warrow mentioned something about extending the ice time. So if it's council's view, certainly something we're willing to look at and come back with some pricing and costing.
They also asked if we consider running it year round.
They do, sorry, yeah, on the last page there as well. Yeah. That, I don't know, part of the whole consideration. Let us know what you want us to price out, Your Worship.
So typically, the Northeast Bantam Selection Committee we've done that in the past here. We've run 2 weeks longer in a season. Dan, can you tell us what's the shut-off date that we're looking at this year for the rink?
Nothing set in stone, but usually it's the first or second week of April. So,
Of April.
so extending it a week or two wouldn't make much impact. We do have other teams from the city looking for ice time too. They just haven't confirmed yet.
In April? Go ahead.
So I'd be curious, when we had this conversation about starting the ice early this year, and we've had conversations in the past, maybe not during Dan's time, we do need to have some kind of cost-benefit analysis to be able to determine who we're helping, how much is it costing, what kind of maintenance are we skimping out on? Is there a certain time of repair that needs to be fit in between regular hockey usage? I don't know that it makes sense to run headlong into year-round ice. I do know that there are a lot of Edmonton leagues that are looking for ice, and this is considerably closer than some of the skaters are seeking right now, but I'd be curious to have that brought back in some kind of format that we can evaluate, so we can decide with numbers what it's costing and what kind of benefit we're providing to the community, as well as being fiscally responsible.
Go ahead.
So, I had brought that conversation before, and the reason I had at the time was there was talk about a potential grant that was for communities that wanted to do a pilot project. So then when that grant didn't come through, we kind of left it there at the time, because that was one where the community was able to, from how they were going to present it, the community could apply for it, and if approved, then they could basically submit their utility bills for reimbursement, which was would have been a good way to say, okay, let's see how this works out. So we kind of left it at that. But I too would say, certainly I have no issue with the extension in regards to if it being 2 extra weeks. I know that the Minor Hockey Association has been working really hard to try and bring in a girls program. They were very, very close to being able to do that this year. They fell just a couple players short. So if they did have an opportunity to host some kind of a camp or recruitment, that would certainly help a long way, because when people come and look, if you haven't been kind of hosting the things, it kind of sets you behind. So that's there. But certainly the year round, I think, would be helpful to know what we estimate the cost would be a month, because that would be the only way to be able to know if we could go back in. I know that both of our junior associations, the A and B, had both rented summer ice, and city is substantially higher, which I would think we would have to have a different rate if it was for the summer, because it costs us a fair amount more to run. But I do think there is maybe an opportunity for groups to come in, but you would need to have that cost and put it out there with a deadline right away, because people would have to make an actual commitment, or we could get stuck with something very expensive. Plus, I also think we have to consider what other events potentially are being hosted in there and how that would impact. So if we are going to consider the summer, I'm just saying I think we have to do it quite quickly in order to go back.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, you've alluded to it there. I think we'd have to take in consideration that the Ag Society does use the facility during the fair. And I imagine that they would want to continue to do that. And I don't think that we have the equipment or manpower to put ice in, take ice out, put in ice, take out. So I think that would be a situation that could be an impediment to trying to keep ice in all summer. But extending, in the spring, or getting it in a bit early, I think it was had to really move to get it in there after the fair, but it was exceeded. That's all I have. Thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor Curtis.
Yeah, a lot of agreement with getting some metrics in there, and just what about staffing as well? Like, where does that leave us? Does that, are they pegged for something else in the summer? The people that work there currently, if we decide to move it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then there's obviously cleanup and kind of mothballing for the summer, does that affect anything else we have going on? So just some ideas on that too.
Yeah, it wouldn't affect it too much, basic operations for 2 or 3 weeks either way. So do we put it in early, leave it in late?
It all comes at a cost.
It all comes at
I mean, we don't break even when it's rented full-time. So when it's only one team using it a couple hours of the day, we even lose less money because we have nobody on there. So,
You would have to have a big commitment.
yeah. And, when that crew's not in there, they're out doing parks, getting ball diamonds ready and stuff like that. So I'm not in favor of running it full-time. First of all, we just appreciate the equipment even more than what's needed, because it has to work that much harder in the summer than it does in the winter to keep ice in the facility. And we just can't incur the losses like that. I mean, because we don't have a large user group that's willing to pay 3 times what it costs normally to rent the ice. That would be the only way to make it work. So, but I'm not against extending the season a little bit here for them. So I would say, Dan, maybe at your discretion, if you have some users that from Edmonton or want to use some ice, try to reach out to them. If we can nail the date down on this, what they need it for. I mean, I don't see anybody council saying that they're against extending it for a couple of weeks. I mean, it won't affect any other schedule for the usage of the building, and we've done it in the past. So go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Yeah, I think trying it out for an extra 2 to 3 weeks might be a good idea. We might learn something about that too, how much interest there really will be if it starts coming in. So, yeah, tried for a bit, but not all year.
I was talking to Viking. I was at a summer tournament there, and to get that ice back in the summer was a $23,000 bill for one weekend for
Was
the
that
tournament.
after them putting it out though?
Yep.
Because substantial.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, well, I think that I agree with the reasoning behind this. I would still like to see if we could come up with somewhere that has the costing though per month, only because I know that sometimes some of the biggest costs are the shutting down and starting up. So there would be the reduction of the cost of not putting it back in if you're going year round. So just for future, so we would be able to say to groups, yeah, here's the reality though, it's this many $1,000s and this is what it would break down to. If we could do something like that, I also think it would actually be beneficial as we long-term plan for our facilities, whether they be current or new ones, because it might help us decide how many surfaces a person needs or whatnot based upon what we would go for programming. So it's probably a good idea. And then my last little thing there is if we could though also I know it seems far away, but if we could somewhat commit to when we think we might start it up again, given that we're saying this summer we won't, because if we had a firm commitment date, that is something we could potentially advertise now. If we knew that, say, there was 2 weeks at the end of August, we could potentially be advertising that as, hey, if someone wants to come in and run a camp as a startup for tryouts, then maybe they could start selling that now, because if we know we're doing it earlier in August, I don't know.
It would be nice if it was 10 camps,
Yeah.
not one.
But I think some of the youth ones might.
Well, if you take an extra month, especially in the warmer seasons, and when you find out what the cost of running it in the middle of winter is,
Yeah.
and when you add that extra month on, it's not going to be cheap.
Oh, no. But I would say a community as small as the Village of Antwerp was able to successfully put in curling ice for one weekend, and we made money. And that is 100% cost put on the Egg Society who runs it, but they were able to make money. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the same as us running a big building for that whole time. I just think it warrants knowing what the cost is. That's all.
Well, I really believe that we should all know what the losses are at the rink every month.
Charging more though. In fairness, we may need to do an assessment of communities. I'm not trying to hammer our own communities, but this would now be, I'm speaking from my own experience with my kid. I actually did the ice booking and scheduling for summer team, and this would have been 7 years ago, and our summer ice bill was $43,000. So I remember at that time paying probably double and a half to what I know our rates are right now. So it might be interesting to know what they're paying for summer ice in some of the bigger places.
But we've done it in the past where we've run we extended the rink access to the ice for 2 weeks for the Northeast Bantam selection committee and stuff. And I don't see why we couldn't do it for this, and hopefully that you can find some other users down. Go ahead, CAO.
Thanks, Your Worship. Hearing lots of good discussion and ideas here. Just looking to clarify the direction to staff on this item. Are we doing the ice for the extra few days and then coming up with some costing, or?
Well, Councilor Berry?
Well, I'd like to emphasize again that the Egg Society had a very good fair last year and had a very good concert in there, and I'm certain that they're planning to do it again. So I think that we have to take into consideration that before we start talking about whether a few people are going to play hockey in the middle of summer.
Oh, okay, so that's out. But what they're looking for direction is we're gonna extend it 2 weeks in April and give that department, the Parks Department and Rec, an opportunity to try to find some other users at the time. So, yeah, I don't think anybody's against that.
Yeah.
Sorry, and just maybe to add clarity to that is I'm looking at the cost benefit analysis, which would be the financials as well as the community or the potential community impact, because impacting other community groups like the Ag Society, I don't know that it would be a lot of extra effort potentially to extend it longer into April and start it earlier and have enough people populate the ice to make some extra money and justify it. But we don't know that because we don't have the data. So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Okay.
So they get the girls free.
Yeah, and like, I'm not against of stretching, you know, again, it's very pricey to put ice plants together and keep them operating, and when they work in the summertime, I mean, we're looking at a $900,000 bill to build a new ice plant, really. And to bring everything up to code and stuff it needs to be, and that's a huge budget item. We'd have to get rid of the RCMPs.
That's
Yes,
not that option
GO2.
either.
For hockey? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
That'll go well.
Okay, thank you. Next up, CAO Leggett. So you got the direction there that,
I have down, cost out, usage, extend and early, and then that were a go to extend it here an additional 2 to 3 weeks this season.
it would sure be nice if we could get some other users too, so during that time, so.
Got it.
Go ahead.
Me again?
Oh, yeah.
So, next one's being submitted on behalf of our FCSS manager, Julie. And it's just it's labeled the request for council decision, but that'll be upcoming on the next meeting here. So, topic is the Family Day Community Road Hockey Game and Warming Station. The proposal is approval of street closure for the hockey game and warming station on Family Day, Monday, February the 20th, proposed by FCSS. Family Day has been a highly successful event. In previous years, we have encouraged more youth to participate by holding a community street hockey game. This activity demonstrates to youth or to young people that Vegreville values youth by organizing a game between young people, adults, and the Vegreville Wranglers Junior B hockey team. This facilitates role modeling and mentoring by encouraging participation, good sportsmanship, and building relationships. Having the game on the road increases the authenticity for the players and highlights the activity to people driving by. Communication strategy, the Family Day Committee will be responsible for contacting Public Works to determine the management of the street closure, training staff and volunteers on road closure etiquette, and delivery of the barricades before the statutory holiday to a secure location. Once the event is over, a committee member will return them to a safe location to be picked up by Public Works, which will be arranged the next business day. In addition, we will inform the residents and businesses in the area with a flyer the week before the event. So the recommendation that'll be upcoming on the next agenda is that Town Council approves road closures of 47A and 45 Ave up to 49th Ave on February 20th, 2023 from 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pictures attached for reference.
Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Just a question, I see it's a different closure than the previous Family Days in the past few years. Usually it was 49th Ave east of 47A Street that was closed, that up to the angle piece there by the Cultural Center. Just wondering why the change, because I know every Family Day they usually have the like Hitchmasters wagon rides. That would always use 45th Avenue and kind of curl around in there, so I'm just wondering if that's going to be an issue this year. I kind of see an issue with it if there's going to be the horses and the wagon again. I don't know if there is though. So
And yeah, good question, Councillor Bullock. I'm not sure. Does anyone else? No? Anybody have any comments on that? No, I can find out and get back to you.
Go ahead, Director Lefebvre.
Julie Gottslig said at our senior management team meeting today that the road closure be exactly the same as it was the year before. This may be a typo, but
Yeah, I do believe so, because it eliminates a lot of parking.
Yeah, I was just looking at thinking,
And they used to have they always have a fire going in the parking lot there too when it's on 49th. So I do believe that it's just drawn wrong.
Yeah, I'll double check, because as Director LaFave mentioned, I heard her say that there too, so I'm surprised to hear the
I was just gonna ask
the
where the
concern.
warming station would be then in this drawing, but.
The warming station would be in the same parking lot behind the gate that wasn't open for the longest time.
The map on the second page, Councillor Bullock, is that the same as previous years then?
No,
No, it's wrong.
That's different too? Okay.
it's running right in front of the curling rink right now.
Yeah.
And before, it's on 49th.
Should be on 49th from 47A Street going east.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, it just got flipped in. Actually, last year was kind of wrong too, but it was still on 49th.
I'll speak to the FCSS manager. We'll have that cleared up by the
Yeah,
council meeting.
okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we'll see this on Monday at the council meeting, okay? Any other questions regarding, what? Okay, go ahead. Next up, CAO Leggett again.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm popular today. So this one has been in the hopper for a while here, so super happy to put it forward. This is our foundational documents planning list. Background on this is, so during 2022, I had indicated to council that a proposed list of foundational documents would be presented to council for your review and deliberation. The goal of this is to suggest to council foundational documents, bylaws, and policies that staff consider are in need of creation, review, updating, and/or that council has suggested they would like to review in 2023. The preliminary list here presented may be more than can reasonably be completed in a single calendar year, and we did check. We got about 21 regularly scheduled meetings for the year, so staff's recommending that council examine the list and determine priority for the documents, and inform staff if any may be removed, as some of them may be viewed online on the website or by other means outside of actually popping up on a formal agenda. Staff will then take that triage list and project plan the documents on the remaining legislative and council meetings for 2023 to ensure that the workload is as evenly distributed as possible throughout the year. Some of those, as I'm sure you'll recognize, are fairly hefty documents in excess of 20 pages, so we want to make sure we're doing the work, that we're not providing council a 150-page agenda one week and 10 pages the next kind of thing. We'll do our best to sort of spread it out throughout the year. Documents identified to be of critical importance may also be reviewed by way of workshop if you want to go that route. If a workshop is needed, this may be achieved by way of informal steering committee comprised of select council members rather than all of council as a whole, if that's what you'd like to do with it. Financial implications of this report may vary. While most of the documents listed will simply require time investment by council and staff to reach consensus, some may be determined to be outside of the scope of staff's ability to draft, depending on their complexity. This would be documents requiring special expertise, such as the welcoming and inclusive community document or a comprehensive post office building assessment, as example, depending on how deep you want to go into it. Communication strategy. Each document will appear on a public-facing agenda, so no communications issues there. The public will have access to the documents through the agenda and then a discussion on them. And then finally, I've outlined what I sort of foresee as the steps here. So number one being, you guys are respectfully asked to review the list and determine your priority and/or necessity for each document. We can then confirm the priority rank at the January 23rd council meeting. Staff will then spread the documents out over the calendar year to ensure the even workflow, and then we'll begin working on the required documents. And just before I finish my comments here, I do apologize for the list, guys. I didn't realize it would print out that way, so when we put this on going forward, we'll change the orientation there. Font's a little bit on the micro side, but you know, basically 51 different documents on there, and definitely open to any discussion, suggestions, and thoughts you might have on it.
Go ahead, Councilor Rudy.
So I appreciate that you've prepared this so that we have a game plan for the upcoming year. It is a little daunting, I'm sure, for you and for us to take a look at this. So two things that pop out for me right away is the difficulty in trying to match up the importance or the dire need of some of these is probably unknown to some of us unless we've had direct working with some of these items. And I'm going to use the post office, for example. That's one that has popped up as potentially a personal interest of some of us on council. Not that it's not a valid discussion, but as compared to something that we work with day in and day out, that those are different projects, and so they have different weighting. The other thing that pops out for me is that the person or the department that's responsible for each of these, it's difficult, short of going through and counting up, like how many has Dan got to do, and Dale, et cetera. It would be difficult for me to rank order them by department or by severity without knowing if I'm, it seems like Jameson's in there a lot, but maybe it's just because your name is long. I'm catching it longer, but realistically, if Dale was going to rank order for himself, like cash in lieu of parking policy, I know that that's about permitting businesses to have payment rather than having parking available on site. But is that really as important as other things? So I feel a little bit inadequate to be able to do what you've asked us to. I for sure will do this. I guess what I'm looking for is there any rank ordering with the staff in terms of what they see as most pressing for us to be able to focus on? Because us just saying that this is most important to us doesn't mean that it allows, for example, land use bylaw, we've been trying to get together for months to be able to do that rewrite. So
Okay.
those are my two things that pop out.
Really appreciate that, Councilor Rudick, and actually, we were making the proposal to you guys out of that same courtesy up front to sort of say, let's give council a look at everything, and so we're happy to come back, and sort of assign some internal priority to that. I will say in discussion with the legislative manager that, some of these are just rubber stamp mechanical exercises, for lack of a better word, that the policy manual or that particular policy says that it's due to be reviewed on such and such a date. You guys have gone through those exercises before. Sometimes it's just a question of, yep, looks good, we're good to go, we'll bring it back in a couple of years kind of thing. So, but we can go through, maybe add a column and sort of better highlight that on round 2 of this on the next agenda to separate the mechanical ones from ones that we've sort of said internally, yep, there's a couple of sections in this that really need to be rewritten. And I know, for example, we're doing the employee policy manual right now, the foundational one. There's a lot of sections in there that we're reviewing, so that would be an example of one of those that we're going to have to invest some time in to make sure we get it the way everybody wants.
Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I appreciate that as well. The aspect is that it's good for us to have an idea of how many policies and bylaws you're dealing with as administration, because the administration deals with them much more than what council ever does. And that was my interest as well, is actually knowing whether it was being brought, something might come forward. Do I try to assess it as to because it's really old, or because there's some real big changes? And I don't think I'd be in that position. I think I would have to definitely, as Councillor Rudick says, rely on administration to say this is really outdated and it needs to be updated because, and then,
Yeah.
then we can work out a timeline for getting them through. I think that, if you have a whole bunch that are just mandatory, it needs to be done, we could do a whole bunch of those in one day. But if it's a major one, then it's going to take a workshop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do appreciate seeing the extent that you're faced with. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor. And it was to your point too, Councillor Rudick, it was a little eye-opening to us when we sort of put it together and saw it all on paper as sort of an early in the year project planning document. Like, wow, we got a lot of stuff to get through and read and update. So I'm actually happy to see it for that reason, because that really helps us plan it out to sort of make sure that it's all not coming in Q3 or Q4 at the end of the year, and now we can really space it out and work with it. But yeah, I'm happy to take a second look at this and put another couple of columns in there with some dates and priority and thoughts, and we'll bring it back for round 2.
Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Yeah, I'm with everybody else on that, judging by some things. I could see some of the real important ones for sure, like even I think the strategic plan, to revisit that right off the top is probably a wise idea in my view anyways. And I'm also, I go through the list and I see some things that maybe I would like to see looked at in there, so I just need some time to go over this before Monday's meeting,
Yeah.
kind of things, because there's quite an extensive list to go since yesterday. But that's okay, so,
Counselor Curtis?
Thank you. Yeah, I think just for me looking at what's in here, I would like to put an emphasis and seeing timelines on anything to do with the employees is, you know, our top goal. Those ones would be brought to the forefront to see timelines, what it takes to get those done, and then move on from there.
Okay, well, a lot of these in the last few years have been updated and have been gone through, so, I mean, I don't want to be prioritizing any of this. I mean, so you guys get the big bucks, run your departments. I mean, if you, like, I don't think it's our responsibility to tell each department what they should be doing. And when it comes to procedures, if you feel that there's some of these that are behind or need to be updating, I mean, maybe you should bring a list that each department, this is what they plan on working on. And if there's something that council thinks that should be added to that, then that's the way I'd see it breaking down. I mean, when it comes to bylaws and stuff, which we already said we're constantly going through bylaws and updating them, we're just trying to put them a little further apart. And we don't, myself personally, I don't want to feel like I'm imposing on each department and telling which policies aren't good for their department. So I think you get together, each department prioritize what they think's important for right now, and then show us where it'll be on the Q1, Q2. If this is what you want to get done this year, all this stuff, and let us know, and then you guys go at it. I mean, if there's something that we feel after we see the feedback from each department and where they feel they'll be on the Q1, 2, 4, wherever they're going to be, then maybe we'll have a little input there about our priority list. But there's a lot of these that we've worked on 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years. So, I mean, how much more updating can they be? I mean, the snow removal list, I mean, I hope I'd never see that again for another 5 years, to tell you the truth. But go ahead, Councilor Warwick.
The one thing that I do appreciate on here, though, is seeing the list of policies, because it is potentially some of the policies I might not have known we had. So that's kind of helpful, because we don't dive sometimes deep into employee policies and whatnot. So some of those, it is good to see that they were there and covered, even if we're planning to update them.
Yep.
So why doesn't each department sort of prioritize this and bring it back to us? And if we feel that that there's something that should, the order's a little off, then maybe we'll have some input then. Councilor Bullock.
and if anything, maybe I could just send an email suggesting something that I want to see, or maybe we all want to see,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, instead of taking up valuable time otherwise for you. And the idea of creating a little subcommittee or something with one of the councilors, I'm all for that. So.
And just to, along that same vein, yeah, if something bubbles up mid-year and we want to include it, that I do consider this sort of a fluid list too, that if the, you know, we can always bring something up, and then similarly, if it's just that question of, hey, I'd like a refresher on this, don't want to run it through council just for personal information, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. I think we're all on the same page here. So you don't have to have this by Monday's meeting. This does not have to be passed by a vote of council.
No,
Okay.
no.
So let each department prioritize where they can fit it in this year's schedule, and then show us, bring the work back to us, and then we critique it a little bit, then so be it. But
So-
everybody good with that? Well, we still got bylaws to go through, though.
We do?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Your year-end recap.
Still me. So, good. And we had a memo here that was, and I apologize to council, it didn't make the print of the agenda. I had it on my computer. I forgot to print it and give it to legislative services. But if you refresh, it might be there. It's there now? Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. So, yeah, reading from that full memo, this is just sort of a summary of the initiative. So, the topic is to provide council with a comprehensive year-end activity report by department for the town of Vegreville operations for the 2022 calendar year. Affectionately rebranded by our Director of Corporate Services as our greatest hits for 2022 here. So, background on this is on January 30th, 2022, the town hired me as the CAO. One of the CAO's objectives was to improve reporting and information sharing across multiple departments with the council and with the general public to improve the overall understanding of municipal operations. To that end, I implemented several initiatives to achieve this objective. One, provide council with a monthly action item sheet to track activities and ensure that council is informed of the status and completion of direction provided or directives provided to staff. Provide weekly CAO recap memo to council outlining weekly activities by department. And then 3, to provide a year-end summary report to council that supplements our annual report by providing greater departmental detail about our achievements. And this next memo is number 3. The aforementioned activities will now become part of the town's standard operating practices for information sharing and collaboration between staff and the elected members of council. The full report is contained in the attached memorandum. Our financial implications on this and the financial results of the 2022 activities will be captured and presented to council and the public in the 2022 financial statements. Our communication strategy, this year-end summary memo is meant to be referenced through this agenda, as well as the next regular council meeting agenda on January 23rd. As these agendas are public documents, council may direct any member of the public to obtain this memo online through that agenda document. Many of the items highlighted will also be discussed in the municipal annual report. The recommendation or recommended options is that 1, council will receive the 2022 year-end summary report for information and that staff be commended on the outstanding business results in 2022, or that council direct administration to provide additional information on the 2022 year-end activities.
Okay. Any comments? Councilor Bullock?
Actually, yeah, and I went through the report, and this is great. The information is reviewing everything for us and going over that. That's keeping us in the loop is a really good thing, and I appreciate action item report, that at every ledge meeting that comes out as well. I see it as a good direction everyone's going in. Collaboratively and keeping everyone in the loop will just allow us to work better together.
Okay, Councilor Berry was first.
Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, fast to the draw. Yes, I appreciate it. I think one of the things that it did for me was indicate to me just how much is going on in staff. And I apologize for the phone is turned off, but it isn't turned off.
You can turn it off right now. You can take a minute and turn it off. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm quite certain it's another scam.
Sure. Go ahead, Councilor Berry.
Getting lost. Sorry for that. What I was going to say is that I did appreciate or do appreciate the extent that administration and staff have been involved in for the year. I think that we don't really quite realize it until we can see sort of itemized here like this, the amount that is done. And I appreciated seeing some of this on a weekly basis. It keeps you up to date on what's going on. So I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to hear that it's going to continue.
Thank you.
I know it's added work for the staff to compile this, but I think that it really does, not just to myself, but to the public as well, give a little bit of a demonstration that there's a lot of things going on, and I dare say that it probably doesn't even catch all of it just the same. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree, Councilor Berry. It, especially in that reference to the public, part of my practice with these types of year-end reports, and, I've done these in my other municipalities as well, was really to help provide that information to council, but then, give you those tidbits for discussions with members of the public to say, look at everything we're accomplishing as a collective unit here. It's a real good news story.
Councilor Warba.
This is just a question from here, and I'm not sure if this needs to go to Director Saskew or to Jameson on this one, but it's in regards to communications on social media. I'm just wondering, on our Facebook, do we currently and I'm not saying we should be, I'm just wondering if we are currently boosting items, and not general items like the ones that are to local media, but like when we're doing something like land available or whatnot. I was just wondering if we actually are boosting, and if we are, whether we just do that as a communications, or whether typically we budget it in whatever campaign we'd be marketing. Sorry.
Field that one. Yes, we do boost. Not every post, obviously, and it certainly depends on the return on the investment is probably the best way to phrase it. So if, for instance, it pertains to a local issue, it's unfortunate, but to give you an example of how well the boosting worked, and it's convenient that manager of facilities and Parks and Recreation, Dan, is here, because one of the last ones we did was in December, talking about, hey, the pool's going to be open during the holidays, book your parties, and not to take credit for the idea, but we'll certainly, our department will take a little bit of credit for boosting that post, and I believe that Manager Kuzmic would attest that it was relatively successful. So we boost in cases when it comes to, can we see a return on the investment to boost locally? Regionally, we do a lot of boosting into Edmonton, into Calgary, and into eastern portions of the country when it comes to our land availability. And that's something we really started focusing on Q4 of 2022, including Google AdWords, including LinkedIn posts, Facebook. We put together a pretty robust strategy in that last quarter of last year. And again, as you'd see in the statistics for the social media, some of the impressions, some of the views, some of the people we reached, almost double in some cases. But that was strategic because we're trying to let people know we've got assets for sale.
Yeah, that's great. That answered my question. And I was just kind of wondering that because some of those numbers seemed like they had jumped quite a bit, and I wondered if that was a result of. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Riddick.
I love to see data points, and I'm happy to see that departments are keeping track of those kinds of pieces of information to be able to show to the public what's happening in each of these departments and to demonstrate to us as well in one collated list like this. I do have a couple questions. The one thing that pops out in each of these is the staffing components, and it's not reported the same way across each of the reports, and I understand that each department reported on their own. The reason that pops out for me is that I've had a lot of questions recently because there's been a lot of ads about the number of postings that we have for the town of Vegreville. So it has come to the public's attention that we are hiring so many people, and I'm using their terminology, but that would be helpful, I think, also because that's a new department. Maybe preemptively, maybe it's too soon to do that, but to be able to demonstrate to us as council when we're making financial decisions during the budget process, to be able to determine, and this is something that we've developed over time, for example, not budgeting for positions that were chronically left open because we couldn't staff them would be an inappropriate way of budgeting. Similarly, if we're replacing one for another, or if we're changing a title of a position, etc., some of those are a little bit difficult to demonstrate, but it would be helpful to be able to say that our organization grew by X number or it shrank by X number if we're going to be reporting that. So that would just be one point. The other part that I think is important from my own reading of this is all of these things were done with the intention of achieving our strategic goals as a council. The will of council is being enacted by all of the work, all of the busy things, all of the tasks that are listed here and more that are not listed. And I guess that would be the part maybe that isn't captured here, and maybe that we need to think about as council. How do we demonstrate to the public, did we achieve our goal? So for example, Jameson's just explained the goal of advertising and doing the push in such a way, but there are lots of other tasks that each of our departments have done. And why did we do that? Did we achieve the goal of completing all of these road projects so that we have a certain quality infrastructure investment. I mean, I guess those are the qualitative statements that come before and after an audit potentially, or part of a corporate review or our annual report. So that would just be the impression part of it too, is that data is important. I'm always a big fan of keeping track of it, but to what end? Like, why are we doing this work, and who are we trying to benefit?
Okay. Thank you. Next up is me. We have received a thank you from St. Paul Search and Rescue, and sending our best wishes for a happy 2023, and thank you for your support in 2022. In 2022, our team completed 5 searches, held 18 meetings, local training sessions, and participated in 9 fundraising events. With your help, we were able to purchase small equipment, send a few members to specialized training, and continue the work we do for the region. And I guess we give a donation to this St. Paul Search and Rescue organization.
We did.
I'm sure we did, too. Well, good on them. You never know when a team like that's going to be needed, so. Okay. Next will be roundtable discussion, and we're going to start with Councilor Curtis.
Pretty light for me. I had a couple of questions around snow removal, a lot of good comments as well too. And then again with the fee for the mailing of invoices and that. So we're trying to educate and let the folks know it's a positive, and we're moving forward with it. And I think the last thing I had was our last council meeting. So that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Riddick.
2 things that people have contacted me about. The staffing positions that have been advertised recently, and they're kind of across the organization. So just questions about why do we have vacancies, how have they arrived, ranging from concern to excitement, because of course, depending on who you are, there aren't a lot of jobs. For example, for the large number of Ukrainian displaced persons that are in the community. So that is one range of opinion, and then the other range is why do we have so many jobs available? And then the other is about the billing for utilities. So of course that's got a little bit of extra coverage on our social media, and I wonder if it's worth having another discussion about how do we do some of the graduation of implementation, or a more fulsome discussion about how to share that information. I heard Director Saskew on Talk of the Town, and it was very straightforward, and it covered a lot of the base points that we discussed here during our budgeting process. But it would be helpful, in this case, when I talk about data, it would be helpful to know how many have already been on the billing process already. So there are a lot of people that weighed in on our social media. Some of them live in Vegreville, some of them do not. So it would be helpful to be able to dispel the concern for some of the residents, who include seniors that may not have access to the same technological expertise as some of our residents do. So those are the 2 concerns I've heard.
Director Saskew, we're going to be bringing this up in your highlights. Okay, so we've all had some calls, so we'll be fine. Go ahead, CA.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I was going to mention that too, that Director Saskew's got some comments on that initiative. And then just on the staffing front, Councilor Rudick, without going through each position, just off the top of my head, solid 90% of the positions that we're seeing advertised, and I get it from members of the public now that you bring it up, that yeah, we're consistently running 2 to 4 job ads pretty much every month, and the perception could be there that we're just adding people by leaps and bounds. You know, probably a solid 90% of the positions that are advertised are because there was a vacancy for whatever reason in that particular position. So
Changes, that's what it is.
yeah, we're a 100-person organization. People come and go for whatever reasons. So yeah, the vast majority of them are to fill vacancies.
Councilor Warwick. Oh,
So-
sorry, were you done?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, mine was obviously some of that same, which we'll go through, but the only other one that I had was actually, one was a senior and one was a working resident, and since it was mentioned about Talk of the Town, they actually were just stating how much they like to hear when staff comes on, and that they actually said it often explains more, because a lot of them won't go to our website, even though I know the information's there, but it does seem like the talk of the town is a good thing. And they expressed too that they have liked when council has come on, so I think that's something we should continue to do, because actually I tuned into one this morning to listen, and it was from one of our new members from the FCSS, and it was kind of nice to hear. So just something I think the general public appreciates, that decision we made to deal with talk of the town.
Thank you. Councillor Bullock?
So, yeah, I understand we've taken all the same style of phone calls regarding that fees, but one person that isn't with the computer and stuff like that had mentioned to me, not necessarily about the bill, but we're wondering what's gonna happen with the municipal scoop. So, because comes in their billing, right? So that's the one way we get the information out to these people too. So can't say I thought about that part myself. That actually overshadowed any snow removal calls, believe it or not. So on snow removal, I did hear a couple things, but I'd like to say another couple of things about that is that myself personally, I seen one area after it was cleaned beautifully, it was great and stuff, and then I seen private residents and a bobcat and a sweeper come out and push everything onto the cleanly swept and then taken away streets. So I'd just like to let the public know also that we're not helping the problem if we're shoveling or stuff out onto the roadway for the public works also, so it causes them another indirect problem that wasn't necessarily caused by Mother Nature. So I've actually seen that happen, and it happens quite a bit from what I could see when I was driving around town too. So just some patience with our snow removal crews, some extra added snow, not from Mother Nature, but shoveling off sidewalks and pushing it directly onto the road that I've seen. So just like to make sure everybody remembers that part.
Actually, by bylaw, they're not allowed to do it.
I know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I was just about to say that yeah, especially after the you know, but regardless, even before the actual, you know, municipal plowing occurs, it's not supposed to happen. So if you do see those things happening, definitely let us know, Councillor Bullock, and we'll reach out to municipal enforcement, and you know, one of the peace officers can go have a chat with that resident.
Well, I must say in residential though. You must say in residential they can't.
Yeah, even commercial, you
Even
can't
commercial.
take any of your,
Yeah,
Only
Okay,
downtown.
Main Street, because I was gonna say they have to put it on Main Street.
Yeah, only downtown.
take it out back.
Take it out back.
Thank you, Councillor Bullock. Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to turn to a good news story. If you'll recall, in November, we had some residents come in and we jointly signed off, and you made witness to those, in order to incorporate a society for Vegreville and Regional Historical Society. Paperwork was all submitted, and I have just received confirmation and certificate of incorporation. And so they have given us our incorporation access number and our business number, and that now clears the path for me to start creating some more documents, and I will be making some arrangements with town staff here to and council to come forward and discuss a letter of agreement for how we can assist the town at the museum area and et cetera. So we've got the bylaws registered now, and we have our objectives registered. So we are in a position to start moving forward, and I'm hoping that over the period of the next few months, we can encourage a number of residents to join this society. So we will be doing some advertising and looking at building this. And it's to try and come back to the society that was here in the earlier years that did so much good work in terms of publishing the 2 volumes of history for the town, and were actually instrumental in creating the first museum. So I think that maybe we can try and revitalize this historical society and keep going, because there's a lot of history that we're making even today that needs to be registered. So, thank you.
And this society will have the ability to raise, as a nonprofit, and do casinos and things like that. Okay, good job. Nice to see that it's been incorporated, and it's the next step in our plan moving forward there. Okay, so as far as, yeah, I've been hearing numerous calls regarding the changes to the fees and stuff on the statement, and I've been pretty much explaining why it's being put in there. The stuff that's on Facebook, it's kind of funny that people have a lot of time to spend on Facebook but couldn't go sign up for their, it's kind of weird, but anyway, we're going to talk about that when we get to Director Saskew. Other than that, I'm glad it hasn't snowed anymore, and we haven't had a lot of major breakdowns within the system, which is good. And basically, I've had no negative calls. I've had some comments that people that we haven't been to their place yet, but I think that they were half-assed being funny. I don't know if I can say ass here, can I? I don't know. Okay, but
You
I
only
said
said
it.
half.
Yeah, I'm only half in the bag here, so. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna get to Director Saskew's highlight report here, Director's highlights, and we'll engage in this conversation. So go ahead, Director Saskew.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my entire director's report today is devoted to the paperless. So just a little background and some updated numbers for you all, and then we can get into the discussion piece of it. So paperless implementation has been in full force for our utilities and taxation departments. We've had a very good uptake actually since December. We had 100 sign up between December and the first week of January when there was January bills were sent out. Since our last utility bills were sent out, so last week, we've had an additional 200 submissions on our online form that we have, so that easy to use form. So it's been an exceptional uptake of this in the last week. As of January, we had 795 people signed up for the utilities. And as a quick reminder, in 2021, we sent out on average 2,300 to 2,500 paper statements per month with approximately 500 people signed up. So we're making a little dent in it in the last 2 weeks than compared to what we've had in the past. So that's actually really good to see. On Councillor Bullock's point about the municipal scoop, as a reminder, the municipal scoop is attached to the emails as an additional attachment. So if people have an email and they sign up as paperless, they are still receiving the municipal scoop, just in an electronic format. And they can always print it out at the library or anything like that, their own home printer. We have seen some complaints at our admin office as well. We have been advising ratepayers, instead of complaining to us or calling counselor, to actually write a letter about what their hardships are, what the barriers are for them to signing up, so that us as council can actually have a discussion about some of the things that we maybe didn't think about. So we've been really trying to advise ratepayers to write a letter as to why it's an issue for them or what their specific scenario is, and hopefully we can find a solution. Also, to reiterate, we are not early adopters to this paperless initiative. It's not uncommon for these fees to be levied with banks and other utility providers. I know with cell phones, you get one bill and then you get another letter saying, this is your last bill, you have to sign up for paperless. So it is something that people have dealt with in their personal lives if they live in a residence where they have a cell phone, a telephone, internet, utilities. So I'm hoping that people can find a way that they can make this work for themselves. And this is also a way for ratepayers to opt into allowing the town to recover some of the rising costs of paper. Paper costs alone have increased substantially, almost double since last year. The current postage rate is 92 cents per envelope. With each paper invoice also comes the cost of the paper, the printing, the envelope cost, as well as the cost of the machinery we use to sort, seal, and postmark the invoices. So I don't know if everyone knows this, by inserting the utility bill and the scoop, we actually have a sorting machine that does that manually, because could you imagine 2,500 every single month? That would take our staff member 3 days to do. And then we also have a postage machine which puts the postage on and seals the envelope. So those are two machines that we have to use for every single statement. And these costs is just a cost recovery. So the $250 is exactly, it's what it costs us to mail a paper statement. and there's 795 people that are already signed up, and these costs are all avoided by them. So anyone that's already signed up for paperless, we're not incurring those costs for them. So this is our way of sharing the cost of the rising cost of paper and trying to go green a little bit, like really trying to save the cost of paper. The one interesting one that we had come up is we had a conversation with a couple ratepayers that would simply just like to elect out of receiving a bill as a paper statement, and they don't have an email, so they don't want to get an email. They just want to elect out of getting an email, and they've signed up for pre-authorized payment. So the payment will come out of their account every month. If they ever did want to inquire, they could come to the town office, or for example, if they want to pay every month at the town office, they could come and we could bring up their invoice on the screen so they could see it. So no different than them how they're doing it now, and they could pay their bill. One thing that we would have to do with that would be to set up like a paper statements at vegreville.com so that those people that are opting out of receiving the email would actually, it would just go to one kind of email on our side of things, and then we would have a record that they A, have opted out, and B, that's where the statement went. Because this lady in particular still wants to pay the $250 to receive her tax notice. So she wants to sign up for paperless, not actually get the email, and then still pay the $250 to receive her utility or her tax bill. So that was an interesting one. We'll have to figure out exactly how that's gonna work, but just want to bring that one up. And the one other thing I wanted to note is that this is the first step in our paperless process. We have also began the implementation of the virtual town hall. So we have dates set up now, and this should be fully functioning for March. So once we have the virtual town hall, there'll be a portal where people can log in and they can see their taxes, utilities, accounts receivable, pull up old invoices, and including other invoicing such as dog and business licenses. So that is something to also look forward to in the future. And like I said, if somebody doesn't have an email or access to the internet, that's all obviously a barrier for them, but it's also a barrier for them in many other areas of their life. So we'll have to figure out a way to work around that. So that's all I've got for right now, and I'm open to any other questions or concerns that you guys may have.
I'll just have a question for CEO Leggett. You've researched some policies of some utility companies and some other companies that deliver services, and they have a paperless fee. What does their policy state?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So I did spend some time this week looking into that, just because there have been a number of, and like Director Saskew said, overwhelmingly, it's been well received. We're seeing good uptake on it. There's that sort of small number of people that are having concern with it for whatever reason. So I did look into some of the policies and practices for other large-scale organizations. First one being the banks. And what I was able to find was that the banks have actually been in this process for well over a decade for the most part, dating back to like 2012. Where it's $2 for your paper statement fee because an online, system exists to just get it by email. I then looked at some of the utility companies, and they have the similar thing embedded in the admin fee that's on their bills. And that may or may not be there depending on whether or not the client chooses to go electronic versus receiving a paper statement. And then the last two interesting ones were I looked at Bell and TELUS, the two largest public phone companies or publicly traded phone companies in Canada. They've been at it for quite some time as well. $2 paper statement fee there. The both of those companies actually listed exemptions where if the client, the user of the service, could demonstrate that they legitimately do not have access to the internet, then those companies would waive the paper statement fee on the premise that, well, the person can't have an email address because they live in, the Badlands somewhere and they just legitimately can't get the internet. I found that interesting because some of the conversations we're having with, some of our ratepayers is, well, I don't have an email account and I don't want to set one up, so I don't want to pay the fee. I view it as distinctly different versus, I can't, because of where I live, don't have access to the internet versus, I think I should get an exemption because setting up an email account might be an inconvenience to me. So I think that's an interesting approach to take. Where that applies to us, though, is because we're a fiber optic, enabled community, so I'm not aware of any corner of Vegreville that doesn't have access to the internet. And as Director Saskew had mentioned, there are a couple of options available out there to get public internet access, one through our library, or they can come in and set up for the auto pay system. So it was interesting to do that research, and in fact, I can tell you we're very late adopters to this versus some of the other big fish players in the Canadian marketplace. So we're 10 years behind when everybody else seems to have put this in play.
Thank you for the research, and just knowing that other policies that are out there have been our standard practice for a long time. If you have no access to the internet, then that is an exemption policy that most companies run. Councillor Bullock, you were first.
I'm just curious for everybody, could we just give everybody, just so they could hear what the cost of the paper and the stamps and everything on average were over the past couple of years?
I could calculate it if you give me a couple minutes, but I don't have that number.
That's okay, later.
During the budget, we were told it
Yeah.
was around $170,000 a year, which is close to a 2% raise in taxes. And you can say that the majority of the citizens of Vegreville don't want another 2% raise in taxes. So this is where we're at. The staff has been providing a couple of alternative methods to the very small percentage of people that don't have email. I don't even, Jameson, do you know what the percentages of Canadians that have email is, the last statistics?
So it was in 2021, the federal government released a statistic that said 96.4% of all Canadians had access to the internet at some point in that year.
So we have implemented in some of the other municipalities have been for a long time. And Director Saskew and her staff are trying to find ways to bring people in. I know I've had a few calls where people asked, can I come in and just get a paper, just get the paper copy, don't mail it. So there would be a fee. We have a fee for that. So
That's in the fees and charges bylaw.
it's in the fees and charges bylaw. So, but to set up all these different methods and create a ghost accounts for a bunch, not a bunch, there's not gonna be that many people that aren't gonna, there's people that just don't care. But the people that don't have internet, and we're trying to find ways, to help them through it, so.
Thank you, Your
I
Worship.
don't think you were done, right? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. I think the only thing that was brought to me, and I have to appreciate it to some extent though as well, is although we say that 96% of the people have access to, they may not be able to afford it. So if they don't have internet and can't receive email, it may be a monetary aspect, and it could cost them more to try and end up with the computer and or phone and internet and access than in all reality of paying the $250 to get a paper copy. So I think it has to be appreciated that either services that are provided or costs to the town either have to be paid through taxes or a user fee. And user fees target those who use the service. Taxes is a charge to everybody. We try as council and administration to balance what the cost is when we're paying the bills. And we can only pay them by a fee or a tax. It actually costs money to provide these bills to people. That money has to be recouped. And it's either going to be through a tax or a fee. So, I mean, it's reality. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Riddick.
Yeah, I appreciate that differentiation is a little bit different. I think access to the internet is different than being able to actually utilize the internet. Those are two different things. And we have a very significantly senior population in this community. And I've had a few conversations with people that made a parallel to the current policy or the promotion that's being offered by the provincial government, which is only accessible if you have an email address. And that presumes, I'll use myself as an example, who does the majority of the banking and the paperwork for both our personal and our business would be me. And I'm significantly younger than many of our residents in this community. So I appreciate that there's been a lot of conversation about how to make this accessible for our residents and how to allay concerns. It is very simple to do this. I've had my utility bills on pre-authorized for a very long time. I actually think maybe the second year that I was on council. So it has been available for a long time, but we have very few people that have signed up for it. So I think there's two parts to this, and this is what we talked about during the budget process. From my point of view, is that there needs to be a gradual introduction. We're changing something that's always been in place for people. They're comfortable and familiar. But there is another part to it too, and I guess that question that I have is I can speak to people one at a time. We can try to share that information in formats like Talk of the Town or social media posts. But is there another way to be able to share this with the public? I mean, I guess we need to keep on top of this and see if we're still missing the mark. There might still be people that are not going to be able to do this for whatever reason. Lack of desire, lack of access, there's a variety of reasons. And so I'll just ask that we keep apprised of the situation so that we can keep a real-time, you've been keeping the statistics, you know how many people are actually doing it, but I'll just use the example of the pre-authorized water bills. It used to be that it was not written in the header or the subject line of the email about what the consumption was, and that was something that I asked for, because as somebody who is having it pre-authorized, I couldn't verify, for example, if I couldn't see on my phone and I didn't have access to my computer, what the usage was. It could be 15 cubes or it could be 150 cubes, very different water bill, and that was just a small tweak, and that's something that I appreciated as a consumer and a resident. So it might be something like that. It's a process. People are going to take time to be able to get there, and there might be things that we didn't anticipate that we'll have to look at differently. So I guess we'll continue to have this conversation, because I think March was our projected goal.
For April billing.
Yeah, okay. So I guess that's the other thing too, is have we done much coverage in our local paper? We have. In the advertisements, have we done an article or, okay.
Can I add to that? So I really do enjoy like your comment about like the consumption with the water bill. And that's why when residents are coming in and saying they're having hardships and whatnot, instead of like, you know, like maybe they're talking to the tax clerk or the utility clerk, or we have one temp position up top. That's why I really would like, we've been encouraging residents to write their hardships down, because then we can take a collective look, and like maybe it's something as easy as like putting the consumption and the total payable in the header of the email, so that if you can't open up the PDF because you have poor service where you're at or you're in China, you can still see that that is a reasonable bill, not 115 cubes consumed. The one other thing that we actually had an individual come in, they signed up, they do have a utility or an email, they signed up for the paperless, and they said, oh, you know what, I play pickleball every Wednesday at the library. When the bills are released, I'll just go and pop into the library and use the computer that day and access my bill that way, and then I'll just come and pay it like they always do at the town office. So we do have available resources in town that if somebody doesn't have a computer and the internet, but maybe the ability to use a computer and the internet, like they already have an email, that's what, like this one lady, she checks her emails before she plays pickleball every week. So there are ways that people can have access to the computers without actually having one in their household.
So really, we're helping the library by driving traffic
Yes.
over there.
Well, and no matter what, there is options, and we make decisions based on what's best for the whole community, and we don't try to, single out different groups and say that we're going to make changes for them. But the fact that there is options, they'll have to come into the office and opt out of the billing process, and either they'll come and pay it every month, it'll be a direct withdrawal from their account. If they would like a paper statement, there will be a fee that'll be charged for them to print off their actual bill, but there is a lot of options out there. And I've seen some stuff too about some people on social media saying how their parents are in a bad situation over this and stuff, as they're using social media to complain about their situation the parents are in, when they could very easily help their parents. It really upsets me to see people on Facebook complaining that they have no computer skills and about what the town has done when they're on Facebook doing this. It doesn't make sense to me, but go ahead.
I just want to thank you for the explanation of the $2.50, because that's the calls that I received, was that we were nowhere near costing $2.50 to send out. So this clarification reminds people that we're not talking about simply what the mail-out cost is. It's the cost to all these other things, including the machinery that's required that has that fee. So I appreciate that. The other thing that that would notice, okay, good. I appreciate the statement, Chris, about it being an admin fee, because that is something that I've looked at as far as what does the word admin fee mean. And with various different organizations, it can be everything from including paper copies, including, like, there's a lot that can go in an admin fee, and many organizations choose to hide a number of things in their admin fee. And I'd actually upfront be like the fact that we're breaking it down and letting people know what you're actually being charged for. So I think that's good. The only one cautionary I just had, because I don't want to see you guys on a crazy amount of work, is if we do get where we are at some point where some people are saying to us that they would like to have an automatic payment, but don't want to receive a bill of any sort via email or whatnot, maybe we should have something stipulated then that they can then only go back so far if they were to come and inquire. I wouldn't want to see a scenario where all of a sudden they come up and be like, hey, I think my bill was too high, and we see you guys going back for a year and a half of trying to pull up all of their bills. So maybe there has to be a little bit of, if you have opted to do that scenario, you can only go back X number of months. Because I can assure you, at some point, somebody is going to say, now I think I need 10 months worth of my bills to review. So I just don't want to see an administrative huge thing.
And basically, it would just come up on the screen, and you would show them, this is your last 4 months of billing.
Yeah, and if we could give them that it's like 4 months or 6 months, I just don't want someone next year to be like, wait a minute, I think my bills haven't been in them to be going back and doing a year and a half worth of billing. So if we even said, we can look into up to your last 6 months or something like that.
Okay, so I know that we're still gonna all get a few more phone calls on this, and I would encourage them to engage the staff upstairs and enter in one of the options that we're making available. If somebody flat out says that they are not gonna get an email address and they don't wanna pay the money, that there is workarounds that we can probably make work. That we're probably gonna see half the citizens of Vegreville just pay the $2.50 and could be cared less about ever going on there. I mean, I was one of those people for a long time, so now I pay everything online, and who knew that I could actually do all this, so.
Who knew?
Who knew? Not me, I tell you. So if I can do it, I'm sure other people can get a little bit engaged and do it. I mean, it took me not even 2 minutes to go on in there and register and get all that done, so. Took you longer?
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Okay, so next up, Director Lefebvre, Director Sassy, do you have anything else? Or was it just that one? Okay, go ahead, Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Worship. We have been reviewing and shortlisting resumes for the Planning Development Coordinator position, and you're right, there's a lot of advertisements out there for employment in the town, and as CAO Leggett had said, that 90% of it is people moving on to other things, and we're filling those positions. The business license invoices have gone out, so for the business community, should be expecting those soon. Council had approved in the budget a single streetlight installation on 58th Avenue by St. Anne's Manor between 50th Street and 49A Street, and that was because that street is dark and there's a mailbox there. Council did approve the single install of a light, and that's happening now. The information was sent back to ATCO, so as soon as I get an update as to when the install will happen this spring, early summer, I'll fill in council on that, so that's on its way. We start talking about plans, reviews. The municipal development plan review is set up for this Thursday at 9:30 with Peter Yaklik from Eagle River Planning to join us and guide us along that process. So that'll be starting, and then probably one of the first plans we can strike off our list of things to do in 2023. We did receive a garbage truck update. We had ordered one last budget year. The truck chassis has been provided and is shipped to the supplier of the body that compacts and lifts the garbage bins and compacts the garbage. They are saying now we're probably 10 months out before completion of that. So that will be a solid 2 years from time of order. The truck was ordered, the chassis was ordered in January of last year. And we're going to be 2 years out. And then talking with the senior management team, with Dan and CAO, we may have to start rethinking how we're going to budget. If we have a 5-year capital plan and we know what's coming, we're just going to get into trouble. I'm going to spend 2 years trying to get a garbage truck when the equipment we have now, some of it really needs to be replaced. It's not helping us a lot. And we are, as you know, spent out 2 years, so we'd order a second garbage truck next year. But if we wait till next year, it's going to be here by 2030 is how we're looking at things. So we're going to have to rethink that, and we'll be getting back to council with a better game plan on that. The Prosperity Industrial Park offsite, the agreements are underway. I've got a few signed up for the low-pressure sewer system. I'll go the rest of this week and do a push to get the rest of them picked up. Everybody's been contacted. They've been explained to them. They have the agreements. Now I have to go pick them up and get them signed up and finish that portion of it off. They are doing, as I said in my weekly report, they are doing the water pressure testing. They did have some small issues, which if you've been out there, you notice they've dug a couple more holes. And they got that fixed up as of today, so we can move on and get the chlorination and the back-T test done on the new line. The lift station, the new lift station build, the Master Control Center, the MCC is just about complete. That would be the brains of the unit. So we're happy to see that coming along without any supply issues for that part of the lift station construction. And I've been working with Mitch Newton, our new fire chief, with the approved washer, commercial bunker gear washer purchase. Since I'd done the last one, and part of my role at the fire department was in charge of the hall, and that's part of it. So we're working together on the install of that. So we're well on our way with completing that budgeted item. And I'll take any questions.
No questions? Oh, we got one. Councilor Riddick?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to, in this format, make sure that we thank Karina Sorkin for her work over a long period of time for the town of Vegreville. And I stopped in this morning a little bit later because I had a meeting to thank her because we've had some very challenging situations since I've been on council, and it was great to be able to have somebody who was a reliable source of information and some continuity in an office that's had, you know, in the 12 years that I've been on council, there's been boom times and bust times, and Karina's been there when there have been too many things to deal with and when there have been less things to deal with, and some of them have been very contentious, and it's great to be able to have quality employees like that. Sorry to see her go, but happy to be able to have her and her family located in the same community and working in the same place. So thanks to her.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Okay. CAO Leggett.
Me again. Thanks, Your Worship. So you guys will find last in this section of the agenda a full action item list. So I thought in the vein of sort of closing off what had happened in the previous year, I'd just present the entire thing. So definitely nice to see. And what were we at? 94 tracked and actioned items as part of the direction of council. You'll note a few there still in the green underway section, and then we got 3 at the very tail end of it that are on the to-do list right now. But I think that system's working well to keep track of stuff we're doing. A couple of little minor formatting issues there in it that I'll work through for the 2023 version. But the next one, basically, we're going to roll over with this whole thing's built in an Excel spreadsheet, so we're going to roll that over forward and start with January with basically just those green underway or ongoing ones, and then the 3 yet to be action ones, and those will form the basis for February now going forward. So nice to see.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. So everybody knows about the wayfinding coming up January 25th, and Strong Coffee presentation. The strategic plan will be on the 25th as well. Does everybody have that in their calendar?
I have a question.
Okay.
For those two, should this arise, would that be something to be able to zoom in on? There's a chance I have to work out of Ottawa, but I won't know until Friday morning.
What? Sorry, I had to take a bio break. I wasn't gonna make it, so I
just wondered
apologize.
For that, would those meetings on the 25th be accessible by Zoom if I need to? I won't know till Friday morning, but there's a chance I have to work out of Ottawa. I wouldn't be leaving till after our council meeting, so that's not impacted, but those two might be.
Yeah, I'm sure we could find a way to facilitate if need be.
We're in here, I believe, for that, so. Yeah.
Barring heat, yeah, but we'll be in here.
Go ahead, Councilor Berry.
I don't have the wayfinding one in my calendar. What time of day? 9 a.m., thank you.
Okay, well, if there is no other business of council for this Ledge meeting, I would take a motion to go into closed session. Councilor Bullock makes the motion. All those in favor? Carried.